Hey collectors, Anthony from Hatchesnut here, and today I'm going to let you know that you are being scammed if you collect action figures. I am in no way trying to convince you to stop buying action figures, but you're paying way more than you probably should be. A few words of note, every dollar amount that is in this video is in Freedom Bucks, also known as the United States dollar. Also, any sales prices mentioned are the manufacturer suggested retail price, or MSRP. Now, in the United States, as there is around the world, there is this thing called monetary inflation. This occurs when there is a misalignment of demand and wages. Essentially, people are earning enough money to buy everything that they need or want and still have money remaining afterwards. In turn, the companies that they buy from are completely able to meet those needs. However, some companies take advantage of the fiscal gap in the economy by increasing prices because they know that people can still afford to buy their products. As a result, they also increase their profitability. Any company that is publicly traded and has increased their profitability typically receives a bump in new investments and thus receives a higher valuation in the stock market. A higher corporate valuation opens many doors towards an ever-increasing influx of new investors as the extra capital investment assists in company growth. It is an Ouroboros of self-driving profit and investment cycles. And before you ask, yes, this is boring, but I need to get through this part to explain the rest of it. So bear with me. Then there comes the opposite problem. During the most recent pandemic, some companies found themselves with limited supply and high demand. As a result of the companies being unable to meet the needs of their customers, those same customers then spent their money elsewhere. In an ideal economy, when there is high demand and low supply, a company should raise prices. However, when wages fall, the move should be staying the course. Some companies may even lower prices. Before we get into some examples of how two toy companies have historically handled pricing, go ahead and post in your comments your thoughts. Is there a company out there that you feel has increased prices unfairly? Does it seem like you're getting less bang for your buck? Playmates Toys, for example, the makers of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles toy line, kept basic action figure prices the same from 2019 to 2023, only raising them $1 in 2024. By 2024, the pandemic was considered over. In the case of Hasbro, boggling the minds of many, they increased prices multiple times between 2019 and 2023, reduced quality assurance, and made decisions to overproduce some products. Speculators believe that this was due to the company's new CEO, Chris Cox, attempting to create a much higher corporate valuation by somehow forcing increased profitability in a down economy. While it worked for a few product lines, it did not work for them all. What ended up happening was Hasbro not only made supply less available, losing some longtime customers, they also ended up ceasing production on at least one toy line, namely the Power Rangers. At the time of writing, some Hasbro investors are suing Hasbro due to the overproduction of some product lines during and after the pandemic. With a down economy, the expected result is typically low demand and high supply. However, the pandemic produced a situation with high demand due to people being stuck at home. Hasbro clearly had an issue with initially meeting demand, but later overproduced on things that customers may not have been specifically seeking. You can check your local discount retailers such as Ollie's to see what Hasbro could not sell. Switching gears, inflation rose an average of 2.96% per year between the years of 2014 and 2024. That is 3 cents per dollar per year. That means prices in 2014 would equate to 33.83% more expensive in 2024. Returning to Playmate Toys and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, we find a company that rarely raises their prices. We start by looking at a longer inflation trend than we will for Transformers. In 1990, a basic Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles action figure was $4. In 2014, it was $8, and in 2024, it is $10. What the price should be in 2024 with an average inflation rate of 135.04% is $5.40, based on the 1990 price. That is a markup of $4.60 or 46%. Before any fans post in the comments, I do not need to mention that basic action figures generally have a 5 points of articulation and maybe a gimmick some type. Although in 2024, recently released 13 points of articulation action figures were sold for $12 each. Historically, for Playmates Toys, The higher priced action figures and accessories are held to a different pricing standard. Let us take a quick look at how Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle action figures from the 1990s compare in mass to modern action figures. So to compare Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle action figures, I have two figures from the 1990s, which is the original Michelangelo. Well, technically the second version. He doesn't have the squishy head. As you see, he's he's a little bit worse for wear, a little beat up. And of course, this is the first time they released the shell gimmick here, where you have weapons inside the back here. So to keep apples to apples, we have the re-release version of Donatello. This is actually from 2022, I want to say. So that, and then of course the shell version of Leonardo from 2023, I believe. As you see, shell does open. So we're going to compare the weights. We have this scale here, and we're going to start with Mikey. I'm just going to lay him flat. He comes up to a regular 2 ounces. So 2 ounces, and then we take him up. Now the Donatello, he's clearly lighter by touch. He is 1.85 ounces. So we do see there's a reduction in mass. So let's take the original shell Donatello. He's 210 ounces. Take him off, put Leonardo on. He is a little heavier. Isn't that interesting? So the mass isn't really a huge deal, but let's see if maybe the length is. I mean, I guess technically they should be the same, right? They're supposed to be 4 3/4 inch figures, and he's about 4.5 inches long, and Michelangelo is 4.5 inches long. So nothing lost there. What about Leonardo? Leonardo is just under 4 inches long. And then what about his older companion here? Just above 4 inches long. Let's compare them. We can see a little bit of a height difference. If we stand them up, it might be just the basis of how their feet look. I mean, you can see that he is taller at the shoulder level a little bit, but it might also be the way he positioned his head is. But let's scooch back over to these guys here, and it may also have to do with the legs, because if you may notice, leg positions do matter, and we do see this. So what we could tell at best is the change is within the margin of error. Now let us move on to Hasbro's Transformers. In 2014, a Deluxe Class action figure cost $15. A Voyager Class action figure cost $25, and a Leader Class action figure cost $45. Now moving on to 2024, a Deluxe Class action figure cost $25, a Voyager Class action figure cost $35, and a Leader Class action figure cost $55. In case you were wondering, these numbers were taken from Hasbro's own financial reports and only apply to the mainline Generations action figures. So how much should a Transformers action figure cost now with inflation since 2024? A Deluxe Class action figure should cost $20.08. A Voyager Class action figure should cost $33.46. And a Leader Class action figure should cost $60.22. Did those numbers surprise you? Did you realize that the cost of the less produced Leader Class was offset onto the Deluxe Class? You then may still be asking yourself how Hasbro is still seeing the level of profitability that they have been for the Transformers toy line in recent years. Remember a while back when I had mentioned a reduction in quality assurance? Well, that plus some mass reduction. They can tell you it is about increased levels of articulation and functionality, but the decrease in plastic content and waffling in the molds, as well as a reduction in scale, says a lot. Plus, how often do we see a real gimmick or stickers in Generations? I cannot remember the last time I saw a spring-loaded launcher. Here is Dennis from Gotbot Productions to explain the key changes in Transformers action figures mass between 2014 and 2024.
Thanks, Anthony. And he's right. We're going to kind of take a look at the actual value of the mass, the actual value of the product that you get when you purchase a Transformer over the last decade, and sort of the trends that have happened and why we as consumers need to pay attention to those trends. I've got a number of notes here because I'm trying to actually make sure that I cover things the way I want them covered. We're going to look at deluxe class in general. We're going to look at Voyager class in general, and we're going to look at leader class in general. I'll note some outliers, both more than we should expect and less than we should expect. And I will also note attempts to redefine value. Let's get a couple of caveats out of the way. Very first thing, value is not in the eye of the beholder. Value is not something subjective. Value is a mathematical equation done by a company to make sure that they get as much profit as they're hoping to get. And trust me when I tell you, they're going to push that envelope to try and get as many dollars out of you as they can. That's what a business does. And you can't really fault them for it, because as long as we continue to support what they're doing, they're going to keep doing it. I'm going to start with the example of cheese before we get into the bots. Imagine this, if you will. 500-gram block of cheese. We all love tacos or spaghetti or pizza, whatever you want to put cheese on. 500-gram block of cheese, $5.99. And over time, that 500-gram block becomes $6.99. Sure, okay, that's a little bit of inflation. It's too bad that the price went up. Eventually that becomes $7.99. And you're not happy with it, but you get it. A couple of years have passed, such is life. But then one day you go and you notice that your $7.99 500-gram block of cheese is all of a sudden 450 grams. The price hasn't gone up, but your amount that you're getting for your dollar has now gone down. That's a little bit of a slippery slope, right? Price going up, what you're getting going down. But then comes the kicker. You go in one day and that price has gone from $7.99 to $9.99, and the 450 grams has now dropped to 400 at the exact same time. Tell me, are you happy that both the price went up and what you're getting for your hard-earned dollars has gone down? Or would you say, you know what, I think it's time I switch to another brand of cheese? Well, the same thing applies to collectibles. Let's begin, if we may, with deluxe class first. And for deluxe class, I'm going to use the Combiner Wars kind of era, and I'm reaching down here because I need a number of bots. The Combiner Wars, Titans Return, Prime Wars trilogy as our beginning point. Though I will note that Classics Universe typically had a deluxe range from 91 to 96 grams of plastic, usually 91 to 94. And of course we got that at the time for what, 12 bucks, something like that. US. A lot of my pricing will be in Canadian dollars. I will do my best to reference US dollars. But let's begin things right here. This falls right in the middle of the Prime Wars trilogy. This, of course, is Chrome Dome from Titans Return. Throughout the entirety of the Prime Wars trilogy, a deluxe was basically 84 to 86 grams of plastic. And this guy, indeed, was 86 grams of plastic. And in the US, my understanding is, across that entire time, a deluxe was about $15. In Canada, it went from $16.99 with Combiner Wars to $17.99 with Titans Return to $19.99 with Power of the Primes. They are minor increases. Nobody liked to see it, but of course fluctuations in the dollar and inflation, sure, we get it, right? Nevertheless, you are getting, by 2018, 2019, still 86 grams for a little bit more. And then we had the war for Cybertron happen. And all of a sudden, that 86 grams dropped to 72. This is Emerald Zeron, but it's the exact same mold as Reflector. That's a big drop. That's a drop of 12 grams in what you're offering. Okay, I could accept that if the price was still $19.99 Canadian, but it wasn't. I believe it stayed steady in the US, but in Canada the price jumped from $19.99 to $29.99. If you want to charge me more, fine, but you should take my 86 grams and add to it. You want to charge me a third more? Cool. What are you adding to my 86 grams? Are you filling in the hollowness? Are you increasing the engineering? Are you adding paint apps? All of which would be welcomed. The problem is, if you include those things while simultaneously taking away the mass, at the end of the day, the amount of plastic that is actually used in the product has been reduced. So now you have charged me a third more and taken away 12 grams of product. As time went on, this started to become more the norm. Though I will admit there were certainly outliers, such as this guy. This, of course, is Impactor. An Impactor clocks in as a deluxe at a hefty 104 grams. And admittedly, the Earthrise Ironhide, the Earthrise Ratchet clocked in at 124 grams. Gigantic for a deluxe. But if you actually track the trend across Siege, across Earthrise, and across Kingdom, you'll see pretty quickly that, you know what? The mass that they were going for was a reduction. 72 to 77 seems to be the going rate. And the prices, again, here in Canada, rose in that same era from now $29.99 to what it is right now, $37.99. Some places 36, but generally $37.99. So we went from, in Canada now, we went from $16.99, 84 grams of plastic, to $36 to $37.99 and 72 to 77 grams of plastic. That's literally paying more for less. In the US, that difference would be about $15 to $25. I would say that there are times when it is somewhat justified. For example, this guy, Beachcomber. Excellent, fantastic mold, 77 grams. This is your new deluxe at $25 US. Some people have said, hey, when you look at Beachcomber, he was fine when he was a Legends class. Legends class was much smaller, not 77 grams. Legends class was 38 grams for Beachcomber. So there is, I guess, an argument for Beachcomber to be a deluxe. And you know what? While I do think for a deluxe this is really a bit too small, I think giving up a little bit of mass in the modern era for better engineering is okay for a deluxe. That said, you are, at the end of the day, paying less for more. Now, keep that 77 grams in mind for a second. In that same era, we had changes to other size classes as well. Enter this guy. This is Studio Series 86 Hot Rod, with every single thing that comes in package. All of his blast effects, his blasters, his saw, his matrix, everything in package. These are the exact same mass. This is 77 grams. This is 77 grams. But the difference is, this was a deluxe. This was sold as a Voyager. So, how about we move from deluxe into Voyager a little bit? So, a traditional Voyager, and I'm going to go way back in time here because we're going to visit this again in a little bit too. We have good old Generations Blitzwing. And Generations Blitzwing, I'm just going to make sure of this mass now. I'm going to make sure, since I have my handy dandy scale right here, this Blitzwing clocks in at, yeah, a solid 152 grams of plastic. Then we have, additionally, another Voyager Blitzwing. And this guy clocks in, the Titan's Return, clocks in at a whopping 172 grams of plastic. Now, I think that's interesting to note. This Voyager was $30 when it came out just before Combiner Wars. This Voyager was also $30. The price did not increase for Voyagers. They attempted it with Combiner Wars, going from $29.99 here in Canada to $34.99, and nothing sold. So they dropped the price back to $29.99. This same sort of era in the US had Voyagers at $25. So we were a couple of dollars more expensive in Canada. This did not fall within the established Voyager parameters of 145 to 165 grams. This fell in parameters of a deluxe, though it was sold as a Voyager. Some people have said it's because of the paint. There's not a ton of paint here. There's some, but not a ton. Some people have said because of the engineering. We'll talk about that in a moment as well. But the price certainly did go up here. In Canada, this was when the price jumped from $29.99 to $39.99. So again, you took away literally half the mass of a Voyager and charged me a quarter more of the price. It was a hard pill to swallow of literally paying less for more. And there are times when we have lost some mass in modern day Voyagers during the War for Cybertron and Legacy line with, for example, Optimus Primal. He was 132 grams of plastic, but I accept that because he has so much molded in detail. Something like Kingdom Cyclonus didn't lose any mass. He clocks in at 100 and I believe 45 to 151, I think, grams. But he doesn't have as much molded detail. Now, you might say, Godbot, you're always so hard on Hot Rod. Let me show you something, if I may. You see this? Take away the Commander Class trailer, take away all the accessories. Just have the Commander Class right here as he is. Guess what? With all of his paint, and he has a ton more than this guy, with all of his engineering, this clocks in at 165 grams of plastic. This is a Voyager. This is a deluxe. I would say that they have tried to reestablish the value of a Voyager as something other than 145 to 165 grams of plastic. They have tried to establish a Voyager price, or sorry, a Voyager metric. While I think this was far too low and it was definitely testing the waters, it seems like they're settling on trying to make a Voyager 120 to 132 grams of plastic. But at the end of the day, something like this was more like $25 US, and something like this was $35 US. A heck of a difference when this is literally half the product of this. Laying these aside for a moment, we're not quite done with good old Rodimus here yet, because now we're going to move to Leader Class. Traditional Leader Class, a la Combiner Wars era, using Rodimus Prime. This Ultra Magnus is another perfect example. Clocks in at, this guy in particular, 327 grams of plastic. And at the time, he was $59.99, 60 bucks Canadian. Around this time, a Leader Class in the US was about $45. This Commander Class is about double the mass of this when you put the trailer and everything with it, and it was about double the price, so I'm okay with this being a Commander Class. But let's talk about Leader Class for a moment, if we may. We've already said that with Deluxe we went from 86, 84, all the way down to 72 to 77, while prices rose here in Canada from $16.99 all the way up to $36.99. In the US from $15 to $25. We said a Voyager was established at 145 to 165 grams at 30 Canadian or 25 US, and that has seemed to erode. I feel like they're testing the waters at about 120 to 132 grams for now 35 US. And now we enter Leader Class. And I've said for a long time that traditional Leader Class is 315 to 325. The Studio Series Dinobots are a perfect example of taking value we already had, and though the price has risen, the quality, the engineering, and the paint has also risen. So this will be our benchmark. But we're going to move from there to an excellent, excellent, excellent Leader Class. Boom. But this Leader Class is only 241 grams. That is significantly less. This cost, as I said, $59.99. This cost in Canada $77.99. I can't remember what he is in the US, but like again, you're paying significantly more. And when we're going from 41, count with me now, 51, 61, 71, 81, 91, 1, 11, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. That is 86 grams less product. As good as this is, 86 grams less actual product in your hand for a much higher price. Then we went in Leader Class to this. this, and this. A Voyager, a leader. Here's the thing. When you take away the extra sword, the extra blaster, the couple of little doodads that come with this guy, even taking into account some changed paint apps, because this one had the dirt on him, this one didn't, guess what? At the end of the day, this is 165 grams at a Voyager price. This leader class was 190 grams all in. 170 grams when you take everything away. It's a Voyager that they threw in a couple of doodads with and remolded a couple of parts to try and convince you it's a leader class, and it's not. This is 170 grams compared to 327. As great as this guy is, it's a Voyager being passed off as a leader. It's not a leader. But that's not even the worst culprit. Let's go to the worst culprit. Actually, the worst two culprits, because it's not even Hot Rod. Though everybody thinks I gotta hate on for that guy. I don't. It's just, it's not a Voyager. And saying so is outright wrong. But let's go to this example, because everybody likes this one as well. And this is where I kind of move a little bit from the mass and the price to them trying to reestablish value. I just want to double check something here. So far, we've covered all three. We have seen that in each case, we have a mass that's reduced while the price has gone up. And that takes us to the new Studio Series 86 Devastator and Scrapper. The new Scrapper is going to be a Voyager. So was the Combiner Wars. The Combiner Wars clocked in at 160 grams. Right in the ballpark of what a Voyager should be. The new one, though I don't have him in hand yet, is about the same size when stood next to this Voyager. Again, I question if it's really a Voyager. This clocks in at 119 grams. Granted, probably too much for a deluxe. But next to each other, 119, 160. I'm sorry, this is not a Voyager compared to this. And again, before you say, oh, the engineering, the justification used for a Voyager price tag being applied to Scrapper in the 86 line, according to Evan, is that he has a ratchet joint. I don't know if I buy that. But through it all, in trying to redefine value, in trying to squeeze everything that they can from you, the consumer, here's the most telling of them all. Soundwave and Soundwave. One of these came with some less paint apps, the Netflix one, the yellowing problem, and 2 cassettes. It was sold as a Voyager. This one, they refined I can't say that they added paint around here. They didn't. They just changed from yellow to gold. That's not added. That's changed. They did re-add the little tiny red lines around, and they did throw in one more cassette. And they sold this as a leader class. But guess what? At the end of the day, this leader class, with his 3 cassettes, clocks in at the same mass, 165 grams, as this Voyager. This is an outright attempt to not only give you less product for more money, but to redefine what a leader class is so that you will accept it as a Voyager. Whether you want to play that game or accept that game is going to have to be up to you. But if we as consumers are not careful and watch how much we're paying for how little we're getting, we may just have to worry about being taken advantage of. And isn't that a terrible thing to fear for something that you enjoy collecting and something that you love so much? Food for thought.
When we talk about action figures, the biggest cost and easiest to reduce in manufacturing is the plastics. According to the TF Wiki, there are 6 types of common resins used in Transformers toys. Polycarbonate is the first, and it is used to simulate glass, like for windshields, and can be either transparent or opaque. The second is ABS, which makes up a majority of most action figures since it is the most durable of the plastics. It can also be made translucent, which is called MABS. Third, we have polyvinyl chloride, or PVC, which is primarily used for moving parts like tires. It can be chemically altered to add flexibility. Fourth is POM, and it's primarily used for joints or parts that may rub together due to its slippery nature. However, it cannot be painted. Fifth is polyamide, or PA, and it's also used for joints or any parts that may rub together, but would most likely be used on heavy or tall action figures due to its strength. One of its brand names is nylon. It also cannot be painted. Sixth is polypropylene, or PP, and it's one Transformers use case, and that is HasLab Unicron shell. It is a heat-resistant plastic known for being used in large pieces, such as food containers, making it less likely to warp. TF Wiki also lists 2 other commonly used plastics, but based upon their placement in the list, one would assume they are either used in the least quantity or interchangeably with polycarbonate, as production costs dictate. The first of that being polystyrene, or PS, and the second being polyethylene, or PE. So for an example, we're taking a look at Transformers Studio Series, Transformers the Movie 1986, Commander Class Optimus Prime. So Optimus qualifies for 4 of the plastics mentioned. The first being the polycarbonate, or PC, and that makes up the transparent. So you see the windows here, and then of course you see other windows over here. So those are PC. So the majority of his shell is made up of what is called ABS, and ABS is basically the most general, plastic that you can get. It is often cited as the Lego plastic. Then next up we have polyvinyl chloride, which is PVC, and for that it is what we would use to make up tires. It does a good job of mimicking rubber, so that's what you would find tires at. And of course, for the joints and connecting materials, such as here in the undercarriage and in the arm back here, that would be called POM. So that is what that is there. Now, there are other types of plastic that may or may not be in this figure. Finally, as I said in the beginning, I'm in no way going to try to convince you to stop buying action figures. I would be a hypocrite if I did. I just need you to realize that in some cases, profitability to the company outweighs your enjoyment as a consumer. Artificial scarcity, lack of quality assurance, price offsetting, material quantity reduction, or whatever else you may think be the cause for current prices and or quality is probably right. Sadly, the only way to elicit change is to buy from someone else. As I said before, go ahead and post in the comments your thoughts. After you have heard what we have had to say, will you be changing any of your buying habits? A special thanks goes out to Dennis of Gaba Productions and Protoman of the Transformers Slag Podcast. With that said, tell me in the comments your thoughts on this video. Did you like what you saw, and how was your experience with it? If you would like to see more, check out the on-screen recommendation. Do not forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel to keep up to date with our latest content. Thanks for watching.